So this meeting of the Town of Norfolk Board of Health is called to order at 7:34 on Tuesday, July 30th. We have a fairly full agenda, and it includes, to begin with, two variance hearings. The first to start at 7:35, which is ticking down toward that time right now. Let's give ourselves 30 seconds and we'll start. So we're going to start with Country Squire. All right, I see 7:35, and I see John Glossa here. So, Mr. Glossa, we're about to have a variance hearing, and so therefore I need to read a little bit of something to start the process, which says that a variance hearing from the Board of Health Regulations is called to order for 4 Country Squire Drive. It is my duty to inform you that you will have to provide the board with data to support your request for a waiver of our regulations and requirements, and that if you do not receive that waiver, it'll do you manifest injustice. You've also got to show that what you intend to do is environmentally acceptable. Mr. Glosson.
Mr. Chairman, we should also mention that the meeting is audio and videotape.
Oh, thank you, Tom.
Did you all catch that this is being videotaped tonight and audio recorded? John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is John Glossa, Glossa Engineering, 46 East Street in East Walpole. And the first order of business for me is I have the green cards and the white
Thank you, John. I will take those.
Okay. And I am here on behalf of Bruce and Ruth Lehman, who are the owners of the property at 4 Country Squire Drive, which is down off of Everett Street, Valentine Drive, in that area off of 115. They have a failed septic system, and I was asked to provide a design for a replacement septic system for them. And one thing I noticed, and I have done other systems in this neighborhood and been pretty successful on Valentine Drive and on, I forget some of the names of the other streets. Mostly it's fairly good soil. But the first thing I noticed when I drove up to this lot was that the front yard was raised up a lot versus the surrounding areas. And I sort of walked around, I think off to the back, there's some wetlands and all. And I had then took a look at the as-built plan and the design plan and realized that there had been, when they built the house, a water table issue. So I sort of suspected we were going to have a water table issue. So we started to dig some test pits near the existing system, which is usually what we try to do, and found basically, after dug into it a couple of times, that the water table was, that there was the septic sand from the original system all the way down to essentially the water table, which would, we want to do the percolation test. So the variance we're asking for, maybe I should have started with that, is to allow us to design and construct the system without doing a percolation test. And this is allowed by the DEP. They have a policy on how this is done. So after I dug a hole and Wade came and we dug another hole out front, and we made some comparisons with the hole when they originally built the house up near the location of the house now. and basically just decided that the best way to handle the replacement of this system is really to put it in the location where it is now. Because if we put it off to the side here or off to the side here, we were going to have to create this mound all over again, which would have, if we went to the left side as you're looking at it, meant taking down a whole bunch of trees and all and kind of, ruining the sort of the aesthetics. And obviously, if we went to the right, it would have been, doing something with their driveway. I don't know what we would have done with it, but it just made the most sense to replace it right where it is. But the issue is that the soil where we would do the perk test was underwater on the day we were out there, and I would bet, $1 to a hole in a donut, so to speak, that if we went out there today, it's still underwater based on the rainfall that we've had this year. So the proposal here would be to dig down. We're actually going to take out all of that septic sand that was put in back in, I think this house was built in the 70s, and replace that with current septic sand and then rebuild the system in the location that it is right now. The system's a little different than it was back then. Back then it was trenches. Now we're going to use chambers, but essentially it's taking up the same space that was there before. As far as the manifest injustice, if you don't allow us to substitute the process that the DEP allows, which is to take the sieve analysis, then in this case it's going to be really difficult to find that perfect day when the water table's low enough that we can actually go out and do a perk test here. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that the soil itself has a lot of sand in it. In fact, Wade pointed out that it was very close to the limit of, we call it sandy loam, loamy sand, sandy loam kind of being the worser of those three. I went with the sandy loam. So it's a .33 loading rate, which would be 30 minutes an inch. I think that's a little bit larger or a little bit more than when they did the original system. So I think we sort of erred on the conservative side, and I just think it was the right way to do it. I categorized the soil as sandy loam when I was there, and that's usually, the old hand test, so I think it is probably the best way to do it is to go with the sandy loam. So the rest of this system will be built in compliance with the requirements of Title V. Wade did point out that there were a couple of things I missed. There's an error in the test pit, and we're going to look at whether it's meeting the breakout rate over here. But and those things are sort of easy fixes on the plan. There isn't really anything here that sort of can't be easily revised and gotten back to Wade for his final approval. So I guess on behalf of the layman's, I would ask the board if they would be inclined or would provide the relief that they need so that they can move forward, fix the system, and then eventually, it's not going to happen this year, but I think next year or the year after, they're looking to sell the house.
Wade, do you have to add to that?
I'll only to say that I agree with what Mr. Glosser said. He did design on a very conservative soil characteristic. When they do a sieve analysis, they break the soils down to sand, silt, and clay, and by percentages, and then you go through a chart, and that classifies it from the loamy sand, sandy loam, or silt loam. And he was and this particular sample was at the lower end of the loamy sand, which would have been a Class 1 soil. But Mr. Glosser decided to be conservative and go with the Class 2 soils. Didn't have a problem with that because it's still within the scope of Title V. Reviewing the subdivision itself before going out there, I noticed all the perk rates were designed at 30 minutes per inch. So it's not really changing too much of what the history of the properties are showing in the area. Reason why, I'm not sure why they're all 30 minutes per inch, or because that was the limit back then. I don't know. But looking at the soils there, the soils did look really tough, and the soils that were compatible for a Title V system were found at 65 inches in and 102 inches, way below the groundwater that was weeping out. And it was done in May, and now it's August. It would be very difficult, as John mentioned, to pick the right day where the water table might be low. And the state does recognize this process to speed repairs. There's no increase of bedrooms on this home, so it's just a repair. It's going to be limited as a 4-bedroom house. But John, your test holes are correct on this particular property. There's nothing wrong with your test holes or your data on your site plans right here. It's 24 Pennacook. Just let you know, I want to let your clients know that too. No, it's actually a very good design. John, when we're actually out there on the site, it is a sloping piece of property. I did mention the breakout situation, and if you went on the property itself, that stone walk is a really nice landscape property. So in the back of my mind, I knew that something would break out would be occurring. You don't want to put earth over it, but maybe a 40 mil barrier would work well. And I think John's capable enough to work that out. But other than that, I really have nothing else to say. But it's a nice policy that the state created back in the 90s. Before that, there wasn't anything. There was a Title V variance to go ahead with this type of process. The state's probably received a lot of variance requests regarding sieve analysis, and then they eventually made it into a policy that the local boards can approve and review.
I have one question maybe for both of the engineers here. The current system is not working, and we're putting a new system where the current system is. So any theories as to why the current system failed and therefore this one won't?
Well, the current system failed because the T fell off of the outlet pipe. So the current system is chock full of sludge. Jason Hockman looked at it. They looked at the possibility of cleaning it out, but they just feel that it's just too far gone. So it really wasn't a soil issue. And the sand that's around it is pretty good sand, and we didn't see any sort of clogging of that, but it's just the pipes.
So the trenches themselves were clogged.
They're clogged.
I see.
And who knows how far that clog went into the soils. You'd actually, to fix that, you'd probably have to rip out all the pipes and stone and replace it, and that's not something that's normally done.
Yeah. So really what we're doing is fixing it. Right? Ripping it all out, and we're going to take the sand out too, to make sure that the new sand meets the Title V spec.
In the Title V report, did state that it was a overloaded or clogged soil absorption system. That's what he checked off. That's limitations of what you can check off when it fails.
Was this like a cast iron? Is it rusted out or something? Is that what happened?
That I'm not sure.
No, I think
maybe clay.
Was it clay pipe?
Maybe. Well, the T's sometimes were clay. Maybe.
Or just broke off maybe when they were
concrete. Sometimes they get knocked off when they get
cleaned out.
Yeah.
But the T itself, Tom, the T itself stops the sludge from going into the exit pipe.
Yeah, so, I know. But I'm just trying to figure out why it wouldn't be there unless.
Sometimes people.
I've seen them rust out.
Okay, rust out. A pumper could have knocked it off, and maybe it was never installed.
Yeah.
I didn't have a chance to look inside the tank.
Okay. All right. Question?
No questions, no.
Make a motion?
Motion to accept the variance?
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
So we're about to go on to another one. So let me read the preamble for the next event. It is 7:47, and so I'd like to call the variance hearing to order for Board of Health Regulations related to 24 Pennacook, thank you, Street. And it's my duty to inform you that you'll have to provide the board with data to support your request for a waiver from our regulations, and if you don't receive the waiver, it'll do you manifest injustice. You've also got to show that what you intend to do is environmentally acceptable. So, Mr. Glossa, one more time.
Again, Mr. Chairman, for the record, John Glossa Engineering, 46 East Street in East Walpole. And again, I have the white receipts and the green cards from
Thank you, John.
owners. And this is 24 Pennacook Street, so that's off of Fruit Street, close to the Medfield line. Actually, Frank and Bonnie Duran, the owners, are here in the audience. And so if you're sort of familiar with the area, they're all the way down at the bottom of the hill. There are houses on the other side of Pennacook, and then I believe probably wetlands behind those houses. And so their situation not too dissimilar from the situation that we just talked about, where at least when I drove up to the site, my eyes told me it's rather low, expect a high water table, and possibly expect a slow perk rate. So what we did is there's a pool in the back. The pool has not been used for some time, and the Durans would like to get rid of the pool. And the pool actually, and I wasn't there when they built it, but I do get to see a lot of things built, and I think what they did is it's an in-ground pool, so they excavated for the pool. They put the soil that they excavated around the sides and put the patio on that, and then built the pool, inside of that. So that part of the lot is actually sort of raised up, which was, they thought, and I agreed with them, is a little bit in their favor because we're looking at a potential water table issue. So we dug 2 test pits. So here's the fence, and again, we're going to ask for the same waiver to not do the percolation test. And then we're also going to ask for a waiver to be 3 feet above the water table where 4 feet would be required. So we had the backhoe come in to the right side of the driveway through this little bit of a wooded area here, got right up as close as I could to the pool fence. I wanted to get a test pit that was at the elevation, of the where we suspected we were going to place the leach bed. So we had that test pit there, and I think at that test pit we're seeing water, or modeling anyway, at about 40 inches, and then seeing the soil that we wanted to perk below that, but again, in the water table. So there's some soil on top that's not so good, and you get to some, I don't know if we called it loamy sand,
Sandy loamy, yeah.
sand, but you get to some better soil when you get down deep. And I actually went down there and made sure that we were in some better soil. So the stuff that's on top was a little bit compacted, maybe a little bit harder. Once you got down, and I don't know, Wade's looking at it, but he knows the elevations that we were at. Then the soil got much looser, much sandier, and appeared to be much better soil. But again, not able to do the perk test at that lower elevation. If we did it at the upper elevation, highly unlikely that it would have met the minimum of 90 minutes an inch. It was sort of that tight. So we, sort of agreed that, that was our plan at the time. And then we came around the other side of the house and dug a test pit, which is sort of probably at the elevation of the original ground out there. Like I said, this pool's kind of raised up. You kind of walk up to get up to the patio around the pool. And at that, we sort of saw the same thing with some soil that was kind of not so good. I think one layer we even called it a silt loam, and then eventually you get down to this kind of more of a loamy sand kind of soil, a better soil. And actually at this location, if you really looked at the numbers, this water table here, and we are starting at a lower elevation, would be more than 4 feet above where where the system goes. So my point is the water table's sort of dropping, so it might not be, when we're asking for our variance, it might not be that 100% of the leaching chambers are 3 feet above the water table. Some of them clearly are going to be more than the 3-foot separation. But anyway, to get back to that again over here, just water table too high to do a perk test here at all in the second test pit that we did. So in that regard, we think that it's a reasonable request to ask you to allow us to use the policy of the DEP, which where we take the sample and send it out to a lab and have it come back. And again, this came back as sandy loam, so we're designing it on basically 30 minutes an inch. The existing system in this case is to the left of the house, clearly, if you ask me, in the water table. So we need to kind of get this thing fixed. The other thing, they're connected to the water system here. The neighbor here from this post here, I just remeasured this the other day just to make sure I was accurate. It's 185 feet to their well. So this system is 200 feet to the nearest well here. This system would be pumped up, septic tank, pump chamber, and pumped up here. So as far as the waiver for the 3 feet versus the 4 feet, if we do go the extra foot, right now I've got an impervious barrier on sort of the side between the system and the house to meet the breakout elevation. We're not going to be able to go out 15 feet and drop it 3 to 1, so we are now allowed to use these impervious barriers, which is a great thing. But if I have to raise this up a foot, that impervious barrier is going to go all the way around this. So now you're going to really have a bathtub. Generally, not saying I've never done it, but generally try to avoid that. I think we're also going to make it a little bit more, and I know aesthetics maybe it doesn't always play into this, but in this case it would really sort of make it kind of a little bit odd looking. Something would have to be done, maybe a wall or something to dress it up. So I think cost-wise it's probably a fairly significant change or to allow it to be 3 feet above the water table versus the 4 feet. So I think so in that case, both of my arguments would be, one, again, I think it would be very difficult to find that perfect day to go out here to do a perk test in that soil that's down below. Again, you can see on our profile, we're taking out quite a bit of soil and filling it with septic sand to make sure that we are on top of the good soil that's down below. So in that case, I think that the justification for the not doing the perk test is there. It's something that is shown on the plan, and the justification for the asking to be 3 feet above the water table, again, I think it comes down to money and aesthetics. I think that because of the wells are either the neighbors are on the water system or the wells are not nearby, is a reasonable request to ask for that variance to be 3 feet versus the 4 feet.
Okay. Wade, your comments on John's presentation?
Well, looking at a repair, looking at variances for a repair on a house, I'd probably recommend the board to look at, environmental improvements, what's existing there, cost of the homeowner, aesthetics, and those are reasonable things, and the state Title V code actually discusses that to help you make these decisions. And it's true, the existing system, if you look at the elevations of the existing tank, the existing leaching facility is probably in groundwater. And it's been like that the last 44 years. It operated once.
I was going to ask the Durants, when was this house built? You were second owners.
Yeah, so when we, how long? Yeah, I'm gonna say like 75, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I mean, this is the Stillwell and the Pennacook we're talking about, right? So,
Yes,
Yeah.
we're right,
yeah, Stillwell's here.
right. So these are older houses compared to farther down the street.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, in defense of the people who designed it and approved it back then, I mean, the soils are examined differently. Back then, models wasn't really looked at as a requirement to design from. Some soil profiles you might see, the engineers writing down rust, like they did at the previous property we were at. That actually was in the old, on 4 Country Square. It actually was in the old plans, said rust, and it was at 30 inches, and that's what John used. But going back to this plan here, the existing system is in groundwater, so it's not treating the sewage or the sanitary waste properly. I mean, and the engineer is coming up with a design with the homeowners to aesthetically tuck it in the back of the property. And I've always heard going on job sites, people saying, why don't I just use my swimming pool and put sand in it and use it as a leaching area? This is the first time I've actually, someone's really doing it. When I came in, they said, we're going to use our pool. And they are. They're going to rip it out, and I mean, huge expense. Looking at the soils, this is the one that test pit 2. John's soil logs as a soil evaluator was correct, but transferring it from his field work information to this plan right here, he made an error. And on test pit 2, actually the good soil is actually lower. It's deeper. It actually starts at 208.92. That C3 is actually a silty loam, and it's not usable. So when the contractor is going to be digging out the excavation for that large leaching facility, he's going to go between elevations 217 to 208. So it's going to be a really major hole, digging it out, and it's going to be groundwater coming in, so you have to pump it out. It's going to be a major process, and filling it in. And I'm just explaining that just to let you know the expense that the homeowners are going to have to go through to get the system up and running because of the high groundwater and the difficulty of the types of soils in that area of the town. And if you decided to have 4 feet separation from the high groundwater, that's a doable thing because they have a pump system already in the proposed design. But the back of the yard's all wood. It's all natural wood. And if they were to bring it up higher, either a retaining wall could be built, and I'm not sure what type of retaining wall John would build, but they probably have footings and rebarbs in it. Or you can go spread it out in 3-to-1 slope. And all those trees, they would probably have to be excavated out and just ripped out and the stumps removed and stuff to prepare for this. Or you can do both, have retaining walls, however he wants to design it. But again, it costs, it will increase to it. And it's a house, it's not increasing bedrooms or anything, it's just a resident in town with a failed system, and they want to upgrade it, and it's better than what the existing system is. And I've worked in that area too, and I know the history of that area, and the soils aren't the best. They're difficult soils. And he's designing on a very high loading rate too, at a 30 minutes per inch. So he's maxing out the loading rate for that type of soils. So I'm not sure if you have any questions, I'm here to answer.
Let me ask, there are some neighbors here or others who want to say anything about this project, one way or the
I'm a
other?
neighbor. I'm just here to understand it because I'll probably have to face the same issue. The last time, we pumped, basically the guy was pumping forever because the water was
Coming
just
back in?
refilling. Yeah, so I know it's going to need to be replaced.
But just to give you a visual, this is the highest point of his lot. So, you know what I mean? It's dropping off in all directions. So that's why I say to go another foot higher, I'm not saying we couldn't do it, but it just makes it that much more difficult. And it's another foot of sand and all of that sort of stuff. And I'm perfectly confident that this thing will be well above the water table. It's just going to be that one time in the one day in the spring or a couple of days in the spring where it'll come up, and on the high side of the system it'll be within the 3 feet, but on the low side of the system it'll probably be 4 or more feet. So it's not like we're asking for the waiver where we're putting the system in the ground and asking to be deeper in the ground. We're just asking not to be up that extra foot above the ground.
Understood. Questions? Motions?
Motion to accept the waiver for 24 Pinnacle.
Motion made to accept the waiver, or grant the waivers, waivers for the testing and for the 3 feet of elevation, as in the previous one. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
So it is 8:04 thereabouts, and we're a little past time to have a conversation about Pine Street Medical Center. This is not a hearing, this is just a discussion, right?
That's correct.
So is there anybody here representing them, or is this just going to be us guys?
No, I think the engineer is planning on being here tonight. Okay.
Chuck is here.
We're going to talk about Pine Street Medical Center.
We're here.
So your timing is exquisite.
Hi, how are you?
We were hovering.
You can use my easel if you'd like.
Yes.
For the record, my name is Paul Varner, I'm with Site Design Professionals. We're here this evening to present where is it? Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Sorry. I got it. Again, my name is Paul Brodmerkel. I'm here this evening representing, by design, the folks who would like to or construct a 36,000 square foot medical office building at the intersection of Valley Street and Pine Street, Route 115, the center island. This portion you see in the middle that's shaded, that's the actual building. It'll be surrounded by pavement, pretty much, for parking spaces. And the portion you see in green is the septic system design. I'm going to break it out into several different components because it's, although it looks complicated, it's not really when you break it down. The building is 36,000 square feet. It requires this size leaching field. It has a septic tank here. So it flows from the building to that tank down into the leaching field. That's large enough to accommodate this much building. That's 2,750 gallons per day. We worked it both ways. It can be either an office building or it can hold up to 11 doctors' offices, which is actually what it's being built for. But because it's over 2,000 gallons per day, we had to design a dosing system. So that's where this chamber comes in. The effluent comes down. The solids stay here in the septic tank. The effluent comes down, and it's dosed a number of times per day into the leaching field. That's required over 2,000 gallons. Then it gets a bit more complicated because this whole area happens to be in an aquifer protection district. It turns out that if we had a 32,000 square foot building, we would have enough acreage here at 4.95 acres to do the nitrogen loading at 440 gallons per acre. Well, actually, Title V, or DEP defines an acre as 40,000 square feet, so that 4.94 acres of actual area becomes 5.38 acres under DEP standards.
I didn't know
Suffice
that.
to say that
They've redefined an acre?
They use a builder's acre in Title V.
it's the opposite of a baker's dozen. It gets smaller.
Yeah, that seems un-American somehow, but that's all right.
So we have the equivalent of 5.38 acres here for DEP standards. but under 440 gallons per acre of nitrogen loading, that's not quite big enough for a 36,000 square foot building. We could get 32 or 3,000 on here, but not 36,000. So then we enter in the denitrification system. That's a recycling tank here, and these are the modules where the sand is installed and the water is pumped. At first it goes through the septic tank to drop out the solids, and then it goes into the recirculating tank. That has two force mains that come up to and tie into these sand filters. And it's pressurized over those. It's not actually dosed. When enough water flows down through the float valves in here trip, and it just recycles it through. As that returns, the vast majority of it goes back to the recirculating tank. A small portion then is pumped into the septic tank, and the majority, 80% of it, goes back to the sand filters and continues to get recycled. It's here where the nitrogen is removed. On the top of that sand filter, it forms a biomat, not unlike the biomat you sometimes see in a septic system as it leaches down through. The difference is this biomat has a concrete bottom because it's sand placed in tanks. So the water's contained. It comes out the bottom by gravity back to the recycling tank. So we're allowed through setting the pumps and the float elevations to keep pumping it back, and eventually the overflow goes from the septic tank to the pressure dosing tank and into the leaching field. And that's how they reduce the nitrogen in the outlet. We've teamed up with a company called Omni from Falmouth with this design. They've put in 150 of these systems. They're going to be on site when it's installed, and they are going to be there during the startup to make sure that everything is set properly and working properly. It's a general permit through DEP. Unlike the provisional permit, it's not experimental, it's an approved design by DEP. And those test results will be submitted to them each time the licensed sewage treatment plant operator is on site, taking his samples and making sure that the equipment runs properly. So, although we're not a big violator in terms of the area, we're almost enough area to do this building. We're forced into the denitrification. Now, I told you that whole story, so I can tell you there's one other alternative to us, and it's not available at this time, but it could be in the future. If we could add 1 acre of aggregate land to this property, that's also in the aquifer, that's not under a body of water, then we can do away with the denitrification part of the system, because that would give us enough land area for the 440 gallons per acre of nitrogen loading. So that's still an option, but right now we need to permit a system so we can get a building permit and get this building started, and then we can look down gradient and see if we can find another piece of property in the same aquifer that's not under a body of water that would qualify under DEP requirements. So that's still out there, it's still a chance. But right now, this works, it's under a general permit, and we need an approval so we can move on to a building permit. Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Good, Tom.
Well, let me just ask the obvious one. I mean, 36 is too big for the size of the lot and nitrogen protection.
Right.
32, 33 would have been fine.
Right.
So the notion of building a 32 or 33,000 square foot building never crossed your mind?
Not for a builder, no, because this is a standardized building. It either goes at 30 or 36. That's what works for their plans and their standard layout. I'm sorry.
The doctor groups that we have, the demand that we have for the building right now is already filled up. And now they're starting to ask for more. That's not going to happen.
I'm sorry. This is
My
Chuck
name is
Cicchetto.
Chuck Cicchetto. I'm the developer involved with this. So I've been through the whole process. And this is what I do in terms of building medical buildings for doctor groups. So their demand, if I could get more parking on this site, I'd be asked to try to build a bigger building, but we couldn't.
All right. All right.
Sorry.
I understand a little better, maybe some of the
I'm sorry.
the pressure
Oh, did I break it?
The size issues.
Need new batteries.
Battery died?
I wore it out.
Killed the battery.
Okay, well, that was, I guess, an obvious one. So your plan then is to basically draw the design to incorporate the nitrogen reduction process, some kind of denitrifying bacteria mat that builds up over time
Yep.
on the sand, with the hope someday of being able to pick up enough acreage not to have to build it.
Between now and the time this building is occupied, we would like to come up with the aggregate land so we don't have to build it,
Yeah.
yes.
All right. I understand.
And then in
Wait.
its place would be a Title V system, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Just standard septic tank, leaching field, and pressure dosing.
So what you take out would probably be the middle.
This goes, and that goes.
Correct.
Okay.
And the beauty of it, from a construction standpoint, is I can build everything except for that tank and those chambers in the back while we're working with, someone in terms of swapping land, without, and then if I have to switch, we go back to what's approved.
Well, we're here to tell you that we're desperate to get started, because this building needs to be up and closed by winter. So we're trying to get it started, and that's why we're willing to put this denitrification system in to get a building permit.
Okay. Questions, Wade or Tom?
I have no questions. I don't think the plan is ready to be approved tonight. I mean, there was some detailed stuff that I was looking at today that could be worked out, regarding the recirculating sand filtration system.
That would presumably not require a variance then?
It would not, no, it's more details.
Okay.
Like the sand filter system there has no access ports. It's not shown to have any access ports, and it needs to have that. I would feel, also giving them more examples, the distribution pipes in the sand filtration system needs to have clean out so it can be maintained, and that's not being shown on the plans. And I also have a question, too, of the return on the filter going back to the recirculating tank, where it's coming back into the outlet side of the tank, where it's mostly recommended to go in the inlet side of the tank, so it mixes in with the influent and the effluent coming from the tank itself. So there's just small detail stuff that I just would want to talk to you, Paul. I didn't get a chance to call you.
Well, that's
But
really
stuff could be
small,
that could be
minor
worked
details,
out. Yeah. But
I was involved in the review of the overall site plan with the planning board. I haven't been directly involved with the review of the recirculating sand filter, but it is a process permitted statewide by DEP, and I take great comfort in the fact that they're teaming with a firm who's done a lot of these, because it is kind of a specialty item. A lot of the septic system installers have never installed, and although I suppose you could try to do it not having done one, I think it's the town is served well by the fact that they're teaming with a firm who specializes in this, because it is kind of a specialty item.
it's a good point, too, because you're not the only approval process. It still has to go to the state for their approval for this particular design.
However, I must ask, and I know you guys are the last step in the process. My time requirements are critical. I have steel coming at the end of the month. I've already ordered it based on acquiring the land. And what I'm trying to do is get the building bricked up and a roof on it before snow. And I'm like, so I don't know what that means. I don't know if you can approve the plan subject to, Wade, their agreement on the minor details or something like that. But if any way we can get this thing, what I'd hate to do is lose a couple of weeks in a process of crossing Ts and dotting Is.
Well, Wade has the authority to approve your plan,
So we needn't come back here.
so you don't need to come see us again.
Okay.
You just need to work out the details with Wade.
Because it started as a provisional permit. That's what caught Tom's and Cheryl's interests, which is more of a testing septic system where provisional permits are for certain designs that the state would like to have testing done for periods of time before they make into a general permit. And then you change it to a general permit application. So I think that's why you're here tonight. Just the board's interested in what the project is.
Okay, that's all technical to me. All I worry about is how do I get the planning board
Yeah.
to sign the plans so I can record them in the building
You're not going to
inspector?
see us again, but you need to do
I'll be
work
calling
out the
Tom-
details
yeah, I'll be
between
calling-
your engineer and Wade.
Well, I just, my question is, how do I get you guys to say go so the planning board can sign
Well, what,
the plans?
yeah, what I already know now is that I can take this general layout and put it on the site plan. That's approved. We've got some minor details, but they don't show up on the site plan, they show up on the Board of Health plan. So those site plans then can be resubmitted to the planning board for endorsement at their next meeting right away. We get that done. While that's waiting or in queue, Wade and I can work out the details here. So that when they come out of planning board, then the Board of Health, Wade will approve it, and then the building inspector will issue the permit.
Because I just started looking at it yesterday. I just
No, I'm,
just to let you know. So it's a fast process.
I know you.
That's good.
He has a building in Easton,
Okay. Which building?
medical.
The Compass Medical Building?
Okay.
And I came to you with the water because they had the septic system
Oh
was
yeah,
too
different
small.
water levels. Yeah, the water table is very high. But you end up putting it in Stoughton, though.
What's
You
that?
end up putting it in Stoughton. It's not in Easton, is it?
No, it's that's a different building. You
Oh,
get,
is that a different one?
Yeah.
Okay, so you did a couple of them then. Okay.
All right, so bottom line is, y'all figure this out,
We'll work it out.
and
It won't be very long.
good luck with your real estate transactions.
Thank you.
Because frankly, as well-designed as these things may be, not having to build that thing would be a benefit to,
Aggregate land is a lot simpler.
yeah. I would think so.
do we come back here for the aggregate land?
Yes, you do. For
yes,
for this particular project, yes. Yeah.
This wouldn't be going in until next spring at the earliest. You'd be working inside the building. The leaching field can go in this fall,
Right.
but the recirculating portion would go in next spring. So we have time to find land and get back here.
All right,
Okay.
thank you for
Thank
your
you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
All right. Our next appointment is at 8:30, Brambley Farm. Let's take a few minutes, we have about 10 to get caught up with other things. Active file, stuff like that. Do we have anything to look at?
Active file and
Oh,
vouchers.
vouchers to sign.
Oh, you both have pens. Mail.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Be 25 years in the business, I'm sure a lot of people know my face. I just don't know all theirs.
It's always a little scary, like I know where you
I
live.
know, it's like, what did you mean? I know. Did I run them off the road today? I mean, did I cut them off, or what did I do?
Oh, good. I don't really have a pen after all.
He needs a pen.
I need one that works. I got a fancy pen that doesn't.
I know. You're gonna have to slim it with a Bic. Send Jeff an email.
Sorry.
I said I sent Jeff an email. I don't know what happened.
Economy's steaming up. It's getting caught up in business. You know?
Kids.
Yeah, kids too. Games and.
Is it a copy of we already signed it?
I had Jack Hathaway sign it so I could get it in.
Oh, okay. So you need to re-sign this?
Yeah, your signature would be helpful. Right on time tonight.
It's real, it's unusual.
It's not usually the way that planning board meetings go.
Really? Are they late? Or they just go too long?
Really late. Really long.
It's like the good old days.
Those were good.
Well, they were the old days.
Didn't say much for a planning board. I think that everything's planned accordingly, you know.
Well, they're planning.
Takes a lot of discussion, a lot of time. A lot of thought.
Oh, it's a lot of technical.
Betsy, question about Mark Orum's inspections.
Oh, yeah.
So, is this the one time he's done this year, or is it happening more than once? In other words,
No, he's usually getting the restaurants are twice.
okay, but like Walgreens, well, he's got a whole bunch of the center of town are all happening on June 29th, according to this schedule here. So that was once. So he's coming back again, presumably toward the end of the year.
It's usually the way, or usually in like February.
All right. It was a little more scattered in the winter. It was like, let's do them all at once in the summer. Okay.
Probably does the summer ones during his vacation.
I worked in a town where the kitchens would call each other up and let you know when you're out the road.
They would, really?
Yeah.
Hey, the Board of Health guy is coming around.
He's in the south side of town. So then we just flip different parts of the town, went all over the place.
Well, in
They confuse
Norfolk,
them.
it's so small that it wouldn't help them.
No.
I mean, if the horse and carriage gave the Eagle Brook the heads up, they have, but like,
30 seconds.
yeah.
To run.
I didn't
Sure
think about
they
that.
can-
I didn't think about that.
It's not a whole lot they're gonna be able to do.
Can't duck.
Quick clean out the refrigerator.
Used to get a kick out of that too. Oh, I knew you were coming in. Why? Because you were at so-and-so and so-and-so. How do you know? They just gave me a call. All teaming up. Didn't matter. Those are probably the most cleanest restaurants I've been in. They took good pride in their work.
It's funny, the owner of the building across the street, the Wayside Building, where the pizza places and when Mark was inspecting, I think in June, he called me, he's like, oh, I know you know the owner, he said, let him know that the cover of his dumpster is broken. He should have the, trucking company replace that dumpster. So I saw him today, he's like, really? Really? I said, yeah, just take a look. He called me, he's like, you're right, one of the covers is missing. Because there's supposed to be a covered.
Yeah, so the company takes care of that right on site. Yeah.
Yeah, so he called them up, they're gonna replace the dumpster.
Oh, yeah. Who called them up? Did Mark call them up, or the company?
I saw the owner. Mark knows I know the owner, he's
Yeah.
also does some building.
Okay, so Mark told you to tell the owner.
Yeah, he's like, oh, just let the owner know that the dumpster cover is broken.
I would just,
Thank you.
Thank you for the loan.
Oh, no problem.
yeah, they made it out of plastic, they're just.
Yeah, I
just
said,
snapping
oh,
up.
I said, I don't want you to get written up for something like that.
The DB, the non-critical part. It's not critical, but
Yeah, people want to show up in
you
their.
could have flies in your kitchen easily if it's close to the back door or window. You know, like that.
Yeah, you don't want to get rodents
Smell.
and
No.
getting in there. And
Juices when it rains and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the clock says it is approximately 8:30, and that means, according to our agenda, that we are going to engage in an update on activities at Brambley Farm. We last talked about this at our June meeting. At that time, there were some commitments made to modifying the size of the herd. Let's start with the report from Wade, who's been out to see the site a number of times, including fairly recently.
Yes.
And let us know what the status is from your perspective, Wade.
Okay, thank you. Been there so much, I just have to look back at my notes a little bit. Last time we met, it was decided that I should go visit the property a few times in June to see if the heat of the day would increase the odors of the operating of the farm. So I did actually go out there in June. I went on June 5th, the 17th, and the 25th, and in reporting there, I did not find any odors exceeding the property of the farm other than one day, which was June 5th. In my reports, I documented the temperatures that were occurring at that day when I visited, and also locations where I walked along Mr. Durant's property, and areas where if I did find an odor, I documented it also. The time I did smell odors on Durant's property, I did go to Mr. Thank you. Thank you. I was just Bill's property, and I did visit his wife and saw his family, and also met Bill there also. And at that time, the odors didn't go into their property at all. And the other times that I went on Durant's property to see if there's any odors coming from Brambley Farm, I didn't find anything that was really substantial. The odors that I did come up with was probably at the very far end of the dirt drive on Mr. Durant's property, is where there's an unoccupied cabin.
Durant, who's Mr.?
Mr. Durant is the property between the O'Harts and Bill Ferrick's property. It's a pork chop lot. Let me see. I think it's best if I get the, if I have the, I don't think I brought it with me. Do you have the map by any chance? Anybody have the map of the farm?
I do.
Do you? Oh, excellent.
Yes, I do. I should pick it up.
Been there so many times that it's all blending in together, you know? It's like-
But it's a little one. clearly have way too much.
Oh, wait,
Yes.
is this the
As she's
driveway you
looking-
talk about
as she's
following
looking-
back?
Yeah, there's a driveway that starts from Cleveland Street that follows the north,
Yeah.
more north-south, or yeah, northwest of the property. And walking along the property, that's where I was looking for odors that could be emitting over the property line. At the very far end, which is basically north of the O'Hart's farm, there's an unoccupied cabin, and that's where I found some odors coming through. But I tried timing them, I tried making some kind of a logic, some kind of a science to it, and I think the longest I've ever smelled anything was 20 seconds. Other than that, it was within less than a second. So it was really difficult. I mean, I was almost hunting for the odors when I was out there. It's really difficult to find any odors.
Oh, there it is, wait.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if this is, oh, good. There you go. Take a look at that. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. So if you're looking at the property, between shed 6 and shed 7 would be where the unoccupied cabin is on Mr. Durant's property, which would be north. And that's where I was picking up some odors. They're really, very small amounts of odors. But when I did start on a property on Cleveland Street, walking up Richard Durant's property, next to Bill Ferrelic's property, I wasn't finding any smells at all, And also Jeff Kane was talking about possibility of wind directions. So I started making some wind socks out of what was available. And there's property sticks along, I think, the O'Hart's property and Mr. Durant's property of surveyors, ribbons. I was looking at the wind blowing there. There's wires going across from one shed to another shed with white wires so a truck won't hit it. And I was watching the wind blowing those in a certain direction. And on Mr. Durant's property, I can actually see both of them. I can see the property line stake and the wire wind socks. And I can see the activity of the wind on the farm being really strong, and then the wind inside the wood area was very less active. So looking at that logically, it was looking like either the woods were stopping the wind, or there's a large topography, a large outcrop beyond the garage between the two properties of O'Hart's and Durant's property that might also be blocking some of the wind. I was just trying to come up with some kind of reason why I wasn't smelling anything at Cleveland Street, but was getting odors more down the road towards the unoccupied cabin. But the temperatures too were going from 70 degrees to 90 degrees, so I had variation of temperature. It was breezy, slightly breezy, windy, but the overall conclusion of the month going in June, that I wasn't smelling anything that you would pick up as being offensive, long-term stench, animal stench, farm stench, odors related to farms. I just wasn't finding it.
That was June, but you've been there since.
Right. Now, my next inspection, I went there in July, because that was a July 16th. That was a scheduled inspection that I observed. Actually went into the farm itself. And at that time, there was supposed to be a maximum 25 adult pigs, and also the piglets on the farm would be 40 pounds or less. The Bramby farm was transforming from a operating of a piglet, of a market pigs to piglet farm, a breeding farm. And what I found on that inspection was that there was a decrease of farm animals leaving. The market pigs were leaving the area. Overall observations, shed 1 was occupied by a sow and a piglets. Shed 2 also by a female pig and her piglets. Sheds 3, 4, 5, and 6 were not occupied at the time. Shed 7, though, was occupied by 14 market pigs. So there was market pigs on site. Shed 19 and 18 were empty. Shed 8 was occupied by a female pig and her piglets. Sheds 17 and 16 were occupied through market pigs, 17 market pigs. Shed 10 was occupied by a sow and her 8 piglets and a pregnant sow, and sheds 9 through 12 were occupied by 6 sows and piglets, and sheds 13, 14, 15 were occupied by 13 new female pigs. So on July 16th, the reorganization that that the O'Harts wanted to do, just wasn't finalized. They still have like 31 market pigs still on site. But it was clear to see that the operating of the farm was turning into a breeding farm. The majority of the pigs were pregnant females or piglets. I have pictures of them, of the females with their pigs, pigs at birth, and also I have pictures of the market pigs that are still on site. Mr. Hart told me they just didn't have time to get rid of all the market pigs. They were still working on it. They had, I believe what I wrote down, they had several leaving that following Monday, and then they had it scheduled for each Monday. Monday's the day the pigs leave. So from that inspection, the office did receive an email from Branbury Farms reporting market pigs leaving the site. So we're keeping in touch with the office. And then also they requested that I return either yesterday or today to do a final count, because there were more market pigs were leaving the site. So today, I went there before the meeting to see, to kind of do a final count and also see what kind of transaction was going on there from a market pig farm to a breeding pig farm. And today I found, walking through the farm with Mr. O'Hart, I found 22 sows in a boar and 7 market pigs on site, and 4 are going to be leave Monday. So by next Monday, there'll be 3 market pigs on site. So it's slowly decreasing. And within the sheds, there are pregnant female pigs with piglets, and there are also female pigs resting or pregnated. They're swelling up. They're huge. Or there's a mother pig's nursing her piglets. That's what I'm seeing in all the sheds. I'm seeing a lot of the sheds being empty. I can give you a blow-by-blow really quick. Shed 1 and Shed 2 was occupied by sows and piglets. Sheds 3, 4, 5, and 6 were empty today. Shed 7 was 7 market pigs, and 4 were ready to go next Monday. Shed 19, Shed 18, Shed 17, Shed 16, and Shed 15 were empty. Shed 8 had 1 sow and 2 piglets. Shed 9 had 2 sows and piglets. Shed 12 had 13 total female pigs and 1 boar. Shed 11 was empty. Shed 10 was 2 sows and a piglet, and Shed 9 was for storage. And typically, the time spans of the piglets on the farm are like 6 to 8 weeks, and then they're shipped off. And I'm assuming that he's shipping off to his Douglas farm to turn into market pigs. So an overall conclusion is that, he has 22 sows and boars and 7 market pigs. So I would say he's 4 market pigs over the agreement that he had with the board. And we still have 1 more inspection that's scheduled for in August. And during my July 16th inspection, Mr. O'Hart requested that he could possibly extend that inspection 2 weeks further into August, which would correlate with the beginning time, which we extended to 2 weeks because of bad weather in March. So I started inspections in April. He's asking if we could extend the August 1st inspection to August 15 to complete his transformation from a market pig farm to a breeding pig farm.
Well, let me ask Mr. Hart, since you've been hearing what we've been observing, I presume there must be some kind of connection to what you understand to be happening at your farm.
Yep, it's basically 80% of the animals are gone or butchered or moved somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So we now have, and on Monday, we overloaded the slaughterhouse that wouldn't take any more. It's only this little small slaughterhouse, Bloods up and Cotton. So we booked in as many as they would allow, and we meet the limit on Monday. And Wade's welcome to come back on Monday to count. After 9 o'clock in the morning, it's ready to inspect. We'll be at that 25 number.
All right.
But 80% of the animals have gone. 3/4 of the sheds are empty. So.
And that raises the final question, well, the odor from what's out there now.
The only odor I saw or experienced today was odor when I went within the farm up to the pens. Like 10 feet from the pens, you start getting an odor. It's hot today. It was a hot day today, and the operating pens they have water in it. They wet the pigs down so they can cool off, and that mixes in with the obvious. So when the pigs do move around, there is an odor, but it's less of a distance between you and I. And if you walk in within the farm, to pen, the odors will come and go. But it's not offensive enough to say, when I parked my truck by their house at the beginning of the dirt drive, I'm not smelling anything. It's when I walk up the dirt driveway and actually approach one of the sheds that's occupied by the pigs and piglets that I can smell anything. So I'm actually right there in front of them. And that's, in my opinion, that's reasonable.
In terms of manure management, you've mentioned in your reports to us that you're seeing generally better cleaning up around the pens.
I'm actually,
around
yes,
the sheds.
that's correct. They have 2 employees. When I'm there, at some of the times when I visit there, the employees are there working. And as I'm going through the inspection with Mr. or Mrs. O'Hart, the employees are working, in the background working and stuff. And sometimes I talk to them and see what they're doing and ask them what's going on, what they're doing. And they're cleaning up the pens, and since we started this from December, they didn't have a central manure pile. I'm not sure what they did with their manure. They might have just let it accumulate. Now they actively have a central manure pile, which I think might be part of the reasoning why the smell is down. Another reason would be the decrease in the animals on site, and I think that's those 2 good reasons.
Mhm. So let's hear from the abutters. Bill?
I think Wade's right. I think there's been an improvement at the farm. And there are also other times that it does stink. And as you said, you can't pinpoint, there's no science to it. There's not if the wind is blowing that way or the wind's not blowing that way, or the temperature's above 70. But there are times that it stinks and it affects us. I spoke to Dick Durant last week. I haven't seen him all summer. And one of his comments was he doesn't come to his property anymore because it smells. And that was last week. It isn't nearly as bad as it was, but we still know there are pigs there. And my concern is it going to keep the way it is right now? Is it going to change 2 or 3 weeks from now? Are there going to be more pigs brought in and the rotation gets a little larger each time? I'm still very concerned about things like that, things about how it affects the water. I mean, all this stuff has to go somewhere. So, even though it's better, it isn't the ideal situation as far as I'm concerned. I would love to see the pigs gone, and there are horses all around us, and it doesn't have the same effect on the neighbors as the pigs do. For some reason, they're cleaner. They're even bigger, but I don't know how it works. This thing with the sows and the big pigs and the little pigs, I don't know how many are in each building, but I think it would be interesting to have a total. There are 30 big pigs and there are 20 little pigs. This just seems like, at least in my mind, I can't keep up with what's where and what the total numbers are. I think when we first started talking, it was supposed to be no more than 25 of the large pigs, if I got that right.
That was the target.
And is that going to be hit and stayed and kept to?
Well, I see a nodding of heads here.
Wade's already confirmed.
Yeah, well, they have 22 sows on a boar. That's their operating farm. They got 7 market pigs, and they got 4.
What constitutes a market pig?
Market pig is a pig between, see if I get this right, 160 to 187 pounds. It's a mature pig, yeah. And that's what the market likes.
So are we counting the big pigs, the market pigs, and the sows, or is it just?
No, the sows are operating, they're like the livestock that's going to create the
Okay,
piglets.
so there's 25 sows and then market pig on top of that.
No, well, no. As of right now, currently, there's 22 sows in a boar, and there's 7 market pigs, which are going to be sold. They're going to leave the property, and then they're going to stay with their 22 sows and boar,
Market pig.
and no market pigs. and they're going to stay with piglets, and the piglets are going to stay on site until they get to be 40 pounds, and that'll be that'll be close to 8 weeks of life, and then
No
wean them
bigger
off.
than a terrier dog.
To wean them off. Oh, actually, there's pictures of how they look. Okay. So they're not very big, but they're going to ship them off, and I guess the important point of that is that you have less of an animal mass on there. So they're eating less, they're producing less, and they're going to have less odors, and the land will be able to absorb it better than it were when you have 40, 50, 60, 100, 180 pound pigs. And that was a lot. It was a lot of manure. There was almost, I remember in one of my reports I commented one of the farm workers would empty a pen with 2 wheelbarrows full of manure, and he put into the central pile. That's how much was generating at the time. It's been decreased significantly since they changed their management plan.
Well, I appreciate the efforts that are being made. I
But-
think they have been.
But I make a comment too. I mean, I understand, Bill. No one's saying that what you're saying is untrue. I mean, I've talked to people in the community that have a year ago, a couple of years, where the smell was there, and I was looking at Mr. Wilder's pictures back then, and it was just a big, enormous pen with pigs just roaming around. There wasn't any order, and there wasn't any central manure pile. The thing was huge. So I can see where the odors and stuff came about, and the reputation came about. But I think that the O'Harts have, since I've been there in December, have done a real major effort to control and manage their farm,
No doubt about that.
in a sensible way, with the neighbors also, in sight too, and thought.
Well, I'm glad to see I'm not the only neighbor here, because, and I don't want to speak for anyone else, but it has gotten better. It isn't perfect, but it's gotten better.
Other neighbors want to, yes.
Yeah, well, first I'd like to say hello to the O'Harts. I'm a new neighbor, and maybe not the best way to meet your new neighbor, but I'm coming late to the table here, and
Please identify yourself.
yeah, sorry, my name is Lucy Gorham. I live on 2 Ledgeway, which is off Cleveland, roughly around 100 Cleveland Street. And so from frontage, we're about 100 yards away. I think our properties all sort of come to a pizza in the middle, so our backyards perhaps are a bit closer than the 100 yards. And I'll begin by saying in the last 2 weeks I have smelled absolutely nothing. But preceding that, it was quite significant. I'm quite shocked when I hear you say that you walked around and couldn't smell anything, because I would walk out my back door and it would just hit you in the face. My children, neighbors, anytime a friend would come by, a relative, they'd say, "Oh, what's that smell?" It's the first thing they would notice when they walked out the back door. And came and went, and because I think we are further away, didn't stop us from enjoying ourselves. We thought, well, we live in farmland. This is, we have horses around us, and I thought it was horses. I didn't even know there were pigs down the road. But I met Bill and talked to Bill on a different matter, and then this came to my attention, and he mentioned this meeting, and I'm here. And I actually said to Bill today, in the last 2 weeks, I've smelled absolutely nothing, and that could be this, that, or the other thing. And so I think the only, one of the things I'll say, just in support of what Bill's saying, what I'm already hearing here, is that, if this is the plan and this is what's happened and this is the way it's going to be, certainly from my point of view, further down the road, it's not an issue for me anymore. And I think Bill's point is, will that change and go back to the way it was?
Well, we have an agreement, and I have to compliment the O'Harts for working hard. I mean, there are certain market demands, there are limitations to how fast you can sell
That's
a large animal.
been our issue, yeah.
But we're about that close to being at the target that was set some time ago. So that level of cooperation is something I think the board is pleased about. We're that close. And the belief has always been that we just simply had an overload problem. We simply had way too much animal mass on too small a space and producing way too much manure for that space to essentially take in. It just was producing enormous smell problems and driving homeowners inside their houses. I think we are in a situation now where we are defining an operation based upon small guys and girls up to 40 pounds being the number one product. It is not the marketable pig anymore. It is these little piglets, which then go off to be fattened up someplace else. And so the notion that we're able to reduce the total number of large animals to no more than 25, and we're all agreed.
Oh, yeah, no, it's already happened, so.
We're almost there.
And then after that, it is just the turnover
Yeah.
of new broods. You don't call them broods, what do you call them, litters?
Litters, yeah.
I used to know that, coming along periodically. That is a much, much lower biomass. Therefore, it's producing a much, much smaller quantity of manure, that much smaller smell. I'd like to think the reason why for the last couple of weeks it's been okay is that we have a plan and it's working. And it's just up to us all to stick to the plan.
Yeah, no, we started moving the animal. We didn't have permission to move to the other place until the 2nd of July. So 2nd of July, we started trucking out of there. And it's been,
Plus the slaughtered and the sales.
Right.
Yeah.
it's been continuous since.
If I may something too, just for the neighbor that's new, the O'Harts also worked with the Natural Resource Conservation Services too. They weren't just working with the Board of Health. They actually went to the state agency. And there's a gentleman named Len Reno, and he comes to different farms and helps make a farm management plan. And they went ahead and contacted him, and he showed up in June, and he's going to actually have a farm management plan in a couple of months. So they're going, so I think they're working in good faith, you know. And if you do have smells, I mean, please give Betsy a call, and I'd like to verify that, because if you look at the map, I was only going along where Bill's house was. If you're over here or over here, the wind blows, and I was following the wind direction. So if you're over here, this is Cleveland Street, and this is their house, O'Hart's house. If you're over in this area here, and the wind's blowing toward you, yeah, you
Just
probably could get
before
some
fruit.
smells.
Just before the intersection of fruit.
So she.
Like stumbles,
Yeah.
basically, right?
Do you know if this is the house that
It's
Dick
like
Smith
in-
built
Oh,
years
right
ago?
there, okay.
Do you know who the builder of the house was?
I'm not sure. It's its own street that looks like a driveway.
Way off the road, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I know which one it is.
Okay.
When the wind blows, you'd be next to the line to catch it.
Well, okay, because I'd love to experience that, because I just wasn't, I personally wasn't, and I was even had Jeff on the phone once. He called me up for something. I said, Jeff, I'm at the farm. I'm really looking for the smell here. It's hard for me to find it. Yeah, you know,
Right, you know what, Bill, let's hope that those days are behind us.
I hope so too.
We appreciate that. That's a very lot, that's a ton of work.
All right. So this time next month, essentially, the marketable pigs are gone.
Oh, on
Monday,
Monday.
we've all, but, yeah.
They're booked
All
on
right.
Monday, the Bloods and Groton.
Mhm.
All right.
So whenever we'd like to come back again, that's fine. Anytime next week.
Well, your schedule's at August 1st. Would you agree to allow
Well, we talked about 2 weeks to make it this
the 15th?
15th. So you want to do an inspection on the 15th?
I think that would be reasonable.
And we should be good at that point.
It'll be quick.
Obviously, if you have any smell problems, do call the board. Let us know.
I thought it was horses.
Well,
Have horses behind
Well,
you.
maybe there are some horses in the neighborhood.
Well,
It's
The
not
other side, on the other
Yeah,
side.
yeah.
That's a good
And
point.
that's what I thought it was.
That's a good point, because once you log in like an odor complaint, I go out there, and if it could be coming from another source altogether.
I think not, but it could be.
It could be, you know. You'd be so,
So if it's improved in the past couple of weeks, like I've seen it, the
Massive.
chances are it probably was the pigs. They haven't changed the horses. I don't know.
All right. Well, thank you
Thank you.
for your progress. We appreciate your work.
No problem. You can send an email whenever the next meeting is.
It doesn't even matter. You can just show up with whenever.
okay, thank you, I appreciate it, guys.
And welcome to Norfolk.
Well, I've lived here. I lived on Frederickson Road for 17 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
You used to
Thank you.
Cleveland.
But you can go home now.
Thank you.
All right, new and old business. Mark's contract.
But still, there.
Same as last year.
Same price?
Same price. There's one for each of you if you want to look at it. And
Is he still doing these himself, or does he have a helper?
no, he's doing them himself.
All of his.
Do they have any new babies on
With the details.
No,
them?
no, no. That's a good question, no. I didn't see any, no.
Did you get a count on how many paintlets?
No, I would have still been there. But they were really aggressive. And their moms. I wish that lady would have spoken up earlier.
Like at a prior meeting?
Or you can call up the office, or when she smelled it, give the office a
I
call.
don't think she realized.
What was going on. Because there was some talk about horse farm cutting trees down for a
Yeah,
horse farm back in that
on
area.
Seekonk Street,
Right.
because I actually got some calls about that.
Okay, I think I know the farm.
Because they did a lot of land clearing.
Yeah, hitting each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It does look familiar.
Because I spoke to that Lucy Gorham on the phone a few times.
Oh, really? Regarding the farm. So it'd be
It's
down here more, right?
down here, but it actually, I'll have to show you. I've got a map in the office. It comes like back in here somewhere.
Oh.
I've already done. I gave mine back too
You
soon.
should have kept it.
I know,
I
I
brought
know.
extras, you know.
Yeah.
Need to sign both copies.
Please, because I'll send one to Mark and we'll keep one.
You know,
Need to
Chris,
date it.
I was gonna say, Chris Wilder should probably know about the agreement Dale Hart's have with the Board of Health when he does his barn inspections or farm inspections. I wonder if he knows. 25 adults and,
No, because he's been out of the loop for a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah, Betsy, could you contact him and let him know this is the deal?
Pass that back to him.
Seems like it's working. Let's keep an eye on it.
Because he didn't order any chickens, last spring. Normally they would order 2,000 chickens or
Right.
so.
Mm.
They decided not to do it because they were dealing with the rearrangement of the farm with the pigs.
Mm-hmm.
So their chickens now look pretty battered and, and old. And they're not going to order any more this, for Christmas Eve, they're not going to order any animals at all until next spring probably.
Well, there is that issue, and that is, what if all that empty space out there turns into a whole bunch of chicken coops?
Yeah, they get one large chicken coop that they work. It's an
Yeah.
operating chicken coop.
Right.
What they normally do, chickens get old and spent and don't lay as much, and they sell those chickens out and replace them with new ones.
Mhm.
Keep them for a couple of years and then
Yeah,
replenish them.
right.
Yeah, you're right. Each of those sheds is an expense, and it's sitting there. And they know they can make money out of it because it's a farm. So I don't think they're gonna walk away. I mean, I was asking Mr. Overhart how his breeding farm would work, you know, with his market pig farm in Douglas. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have too much to comment on it, but that's how it's gonna work.
Well, it sounds like a good business plan.
I've been hearing a lot about large pig operations using antibiotics or any kind of livestock, large livestock, and they use a lot of antibiotics because the animals are close together and they get diseases and sicknesses. And a farm like that without any antibiotics, the meat's going to be desirable. You know, it's going to be marketable.
My understanding is it's got kind of a specialty market carved out for himself
Yes.
in terms of restaurants and places.
And some of the pigs are a special species that you don't get, and they have like little
the jowls?
skins hanging down from the jowls. Yeah, it's supposed to be like a special type of pig, and they got different breeds there that they butcher them differently.
Well, we're on our list, as it is every month, or whenever we get together, is revising the Board of Health on-site sewage disposal regulations.
Yes.
It's an oldie but a goodie.
And the state's revising theirs now, too.
Oh, really?
Gee, so should we wait some more and wait to see what they have to say?
Well, they redlined it, so I'm kind of familiar with what they're changing. They're going to be putting probably not more responsibility, but less activity, less influence, the DEP influence on local decisions. There won't be a repeated variance request. The variance request will be at the local level only, and it'll end there in some cases. One example would be a sanitary tight tank would only be at the local decision, not to go to the state. I think industrial holding tank might be another one also, both tanks. I think shared systems, they're going to keep it at the local level, which I'm not really too happy about because there's a lot of legal work that goes along with that. And it was nice to have the state to cross the Ts and dot the Is because they have attorneys there. So that might be a little different on a local level, a little bit more work on a local level.
Unless they have some kind of a template that we can simply,
They have a template, but still you have to see the paperwork. If the paperwork works, like the entity has like an account somewhere with so much money that you put in per year in case the shared system fails, and then there's enough money to repair it. I mean, it does get involved. And it was always nice having a state because they would deal with all that, and they'd have an attorney just concentrating on that particular permit application. Where it
If
might,
you read their guidelines for how they were going through this regulatory simplification, one of their goals was no increased burden on municipalities, so
I do
it's not
remember.
entirely consistent with that. But
That's correct.
so when are these redlined changes going to happen?
They are looking at this fall possibly. They have parts of it too where they're depending on with some of the work that DEP normally would do, they're going to have an outside agency fill in.
They're outsourcing.
Yeah, they're outsourcing some of the work too. That's also written in, I noticed that being written into the regulations. And some of the systems are small, detailed design systems. One actually is very beneficial for this town is that you have a power supply supplying a pump system. You don't have to have a day supply, so the tank sizes don't have to be larger. You know, just to hold an one-day emergency supply.
So a power supply as opposed to a volume
Yeah.
of a tank.
And or, right. I thought that was an advantage towards Norfolk if they're building a big building, like, for instance, the medical center right here, would take advantage of that.
if you'd like, we could email you the red line copy, because it's a Microsoft Word document. You can search for it's done in the edits mode, so you can just search for
Yep, yep.
revisions. So.
Yeah,
Why
it's
don't you do
online.
that? Yeah.
Sure.
Is it on the DEP website?
Yeah, it's on DEP
Well, it's
website.
14 tiers down on the DEP
Yeah,
website.
and they'll say-
You have access to that particular
Yeah,
document,
we'll
why don't
we'll
you?
get that too.
Yeah, they'll
Send it
say
to
red
us.
line, revised plans, and then they'll say revised without the red line. But it's nice looking at the red line because you can learn what the differences are.
There's a whole web page, but they're changing, the Wetlands Protection Act, they're changing wastewater treatment plant regulation. They're changing about 12 different things, and just Title V is one of them, so.
That is correct. And a lot of the red lines is just language, just taking out local approval, or they're working with their heading saying local approval, and within the paragraphs, they just take out local.
Mhm.
They just have department, little cleanups.
All right. So the work for next time will be to simply look at the DEP red lines.
No, you should probably look at the proposed ones I gave you guys and compare it to ones you
Frankly,
did.
I did that once already. In fact, when I got back on the board, I said,
forgot
I compared these with the ones we have already, and I was talking about some of the differences. I did that once
Yeah,
already.
you did.
But
But, actually,
let's take a look at what the state is doing,
I think it's good.
and then we can do one final, this is what the state's going to be doing, this is what we're going to be doing.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Plus, it's good to get familiar with it.
Yeah.
I guess at this point, we really don't know what the state's going to be doing. I mean, they had a comment period that closed at the end of May, and now they're sort of digesting the comments. So the current draft is probably not what's going to actually be issued. I presume there'll be changes.
But you were talking about the whole thing being done by sometime this fall, right?
Yeah.
At least that's the
Hopefully,
schedule.
That's the schedule, right.
Well, or we could simply postpone this whole conversation until the fall. Wayne doesn't care, because he's been waiting for the last 2 years.
No, I work for you guys, it's fine. If you're not ready for it, that's fine. I mean,
Yeah, we'll
look-
just keep it as an ongoing
Yeah,
agenda
well,
item.
local regulations is an important thing, and it's also a very personal thing for each town. Each town has their own ones, and it's very important that you guys feel comfortable with, and I can wait as long as you guys, I was just doing a service, that's all.
Mhm. Appreciate it. All right, I'll tell you what, at the risk of seeming like we're, unnecessarily postponing this, why don't we look to see what the state has in mind for us? Because obviously we need to be consistent and compatible with what they
Yeah, you see,
are doing.
I think that's good, because you'll probably see some redundancies in the regulations you have now.
Right.
Good.
We signed our vouchers. Any comments on the minutes?
No.
I thought they looked
They
good.
look okay?
Actually, there was just one, it's a small thing.
Do tell.
I think somebody verbally told somebody something.
Oh, yep.
You just
Mrs.
scratch verbally. I mean, if you told them, you told them.
Right.
It's obviously verbally. There's no other way to do
Yep.
it. All right. Otherwise, look fine.
Scratched.
All right. Motion to approve as amended.
Motion to approve as amended.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Another meeting sometime before Christmas, what do you think?
Maybe. Actually, though, we might actually have more
You have, I think you have more variances coming your way.
variances.
Okay. Been a long time since we got one.
Yeah, it's starting to pick up, work is starting to pick up in town, more designs, more repairs, which is good. I think the medical center will be before you guys soon. I think it's a cheaper option going through the aggregate land angle. Just have to find a land to buy it.
Oh,
So should we just tentatively say sometime in the next approximately a month? End of August?
I don't have a calendar in front of me. I forgot my phone. Does anybody have a calendar? Oh, actually. There's one on the wall.
Check the wall. Oh. All right. The week before Labor Day? Makes sense if we've got nothing else going on.
Yeah, I'm not available that Tuesday before Labor Day, but I'm available that Thursday.
Okay. What's the last Thursday of August?
August 29th.
August 29th. It's okay with me. Why don't we tentatively say August 29th? Unless something comes along. Yeah.
Is that going to conflict with the planning board, Betsy?
No, because we're meeting Tuesday, the 27th.
Okay.
So great.
Okay.
All right. Is there any other business, new or old, we need to be talking about?
I have none.
Actually, contract?
I skipped
But their
something.
contract, what did we do?
Oh, we
Did we extend it? Well, yeah, but can we start talking about it so we're not going into that whole same thing of extending it and extending it? Do we need to start thinking about the spring?
Actually, that's a good question, Betsy. With the new arrangement, do we sign those contracts or does Jack?
Jack.
Okay. He's the chief procurement officer for the town. Does
Correct.
he actually conduct the procurement, or do we? In other words, who does the search? Interview candidates, that kind of stuff.
I think he does.
My experience in other towns is that the boards do the interviews.
Well, that's the way it used to be here, too, but,
The procurement officer is sort of facilitates the administration of the
Right.
process, but I don't know who legally has the decision, but clearly, Jack would listen to the recommendation of the board, so.
yeah. Well, I'd be
He
much more
signs it,
comfortable
but,
with the
you know.
board making the decision and then, or certainly making a recommendation to pass along to the chief procurement
Yeah,
officer.
I think that may be technically what it is, but clearly the boards would have an interview process.
All right. Well, we do have someplace a template
We
already
do.
laid out.
We do.
Uh, I'll tell you what, for next time, since you brought it up, for next time, can we dig out that template so we can
Yep.
take a look at it? Because a lot of negotiation went into the design of that, as you may
I
remember from your
do,
last cycle.
I do.
Remember those pleasant days?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, these folks have no idea what we're talking about. Betsy does, though.
I do.
Yep.
She was there. Let's circulate that for the August meeting.
Okay. We can do that.
So does your contract just get renewed by both the planning board and the Board of Health, or from the town?
I think as of this point, both boards have extended our contract to October 31st.
All right, so actually getting rolling in August is a good
Right.
idea.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, we should take care of this,
Yeah.
because it's, I think there's a window, at least the old Uniform Procurement Act had a window of response time that was like a month or so.
I think it was like 30 days and then,
So we had to
This
post it,
Advertisement and,
right.
right,
So, well, that's going to happen before the end of October. It's got to start
right.
quick. So, good point. We need to get this done in August, at least get the decision made as to what the document looks like that's
Mhm.
going to be
yeah, we have our draft.
Okay, all right. Let's put that on the agenda for August, okay?
Okay.
All right, anything else? Are we done?
I think we're
I
done.
think we're done.
Motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect.